So obviously, as I said, I know we can't talk too much about Terrifier 2,
Mhm.
but if you could kind of summarize briefly about what people could like expect and sort of to drag people in to come and see Terrifier 2.
I would say expect the first film, but on steroids. It's just like
Good
I like to
God.
call it, yeah, I like to call it T2 because there was another other famous T2 that came out in the early 90s that, it was like Terminator 1 was a fantastic film. But Terminator 2 took things to a different level. And that's how I look at Terrifier 2. It just it we looked at all the, the positive and negative, comments we got about the first film, and we took them to heart. Okay, so the audience liked this. They didn't like this. Okay, so let's fix this, but also keep this and build upon that. And so that's what we did. I mean, especially the biggest criticism we got was, character development or, story in the first film. It was a very bare bones survival story. It's cat and mouse game. That's what it was. We knew that, and so we're like, okay, well, let's add more because now we have to world build now. So we've really expanded the story a lot more in part two, especially, this whole thing with, we address the fact that there is something supernatural going on with art. Yeah, it's like he came back from the dead at the very end of the film. So we
Mm.
fully address that from the first minute of the film. There's something supernatural going on with him. And this plays into the whole entire film, and this is kind of almost like a horror fantasy type of film in some ways, with it, but set in modern times. And so we have that, especially we do a lot of world building with Sienna and her family. It's because this is where you don't have the typical, happy family situation with Sienna's family. It's like it's a very real family. They have their arguments, they have their disagreements, and you see how this makes this character much stronger during the course of the film. And and art interjects into all of that and causes all kinds of chaos. And to that I will say art is just as much as part of this film as Sienna. So he's not getting the short shift. He's not just appearing in 15 minutes of it. That's it. He's front and center, just like Sienna. It's that they equally share this film, which is I think is great because we have established art. Now we have to establish the Batman to his Joker, and that is Sienna. So we're doing that. Also the gore. Whew. We took that as a personal challenge to try to beat the hacksaw scene from the first film. Was like, what can we do? Because we know now that's such an iconic scene. What can we do to top that? And the shock factor. And I think we have a few scenes in this that will definitely, at least equal that in the viciousness and the shock factor. But there's one scene in particular. We might have pushed it too far. It's just it's like Damien showed his mom the film recently, the whole entire film, and she's like, I don't know who you are anymore. Especially this scene. I mean, we start, and it's a weird thing that the pandemic kind of lended, like actually helped this scene because we started filming it right before we had to go in lockdown here in New York, and then the lockdown happened, and we're like, oh crap, we still have to finish this scene. Well, Damien's like, well, we have time now. Because we took a break from the scene so he could build the prosthetics needed for it. He's like, well, I have that time now to build the prosthetics. So hey, why don't I just go back to the drawing board and even go further with this scene than we originally planned? I have more ideas for what we could do with this kill scene. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's what we did. So what was supposed to take maybe 2 or 3 days to film ended up taking almost a week to film because there are just so many practical elements that he built for this scene. And it's basically art just destroying someone for about 5 or 6 minutes. It's just, and it's, people are going to call it torture porn probably. It's
Wow.
brutal. It is a brutal scene. We are going to get hate for it. I guarantee people are going to be like, how, that's just gross. That's horrible what you did to this person. But I'm like, that's horror. And we want to bring that to this. We're hoping with the kind of kill scenes we're doing with these films, we're hoping to inspire other filmmakers to start bringing horror back to horror again, instead of just the campy one shot kills and stuff like that, and bring back the practical elements, because that's what we did with all these kill scenes. We did as much practical effects as possible. We might have had to do a little bit of CG here or there with things that there was no way we could done that practically, but that's very, very, very minute. I mean, there's
Mhm.
this one thing that Damien built that people are going to swear that's CG. And I'm like, no, that's an actual thing he built. And like when I walked in set that day and saw this thing, and all of a sudden it moved. I was like, Jesus. I was like, that's wow. That's gonna just disturb some people. It's
Wow.
so we're excited for people to go. We've shown a few people the same, because Damien likes to get people's feedback. He wants to know if it's working or not before he puts it out there for everybody. And we showed it to one person in particular who is a huge horror person. She does all these interviews with celebrities at all these conventions and everything. She knows her stuff. So we figured, if anybody could give us really good feedback for this scene, it's going to be Heather. And we showed her the scene, and she just starts crying halfway through it. Not sadness, but just tears of joy. And then she went
Wow.
online afterwards and just wrote this whole entire thing on Facebook. Like, I can't tell you what I saw, but oh my gosh, you guys have done something that hasn't been done in a horror film in a long time. And it's vicious and brutal, but we're hoping it's going to put some fire under a lot of filmmakers' butts to, hey, let's get back to this again. Let's quit doing the sugar coated, half-assed slasher films. Let's do these kind of kills again, and let's bring these characters back, and like the very charismatic, fun characters that people love and gravitate towards. I was like, because we really haven't had those kind of characters, especially for a villain, in a while. And we're hoping that this is what's gonna really just start a new age of horror films.